What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unloose the Goose, episode 24. Today, we're going to be discussing entrepreneurship. I am Sal Mayweather. I'm joined by Nicole Sauce, John Bush, Xavier Hawk, and Jack Spirko. What's up, guys? How are you? How is everybody? What are you guys all drinking?
Water.
LaCroix.
24.
LaCroix.
We're going to be discussing
LaCroix lemon.
entrepreneurship.
Freedom. Oh, Kratom. I thought you said you're drinking Freedom. I'm like,
Didn't we just talk about this, Xavier?
I have fake whiskey.
Fake whiskey.
Fake whiskey.
What is that, like O'Doul's?
It's like O'Doul's for whiskey.
Nice.
it's pretty good though. I tried it when she was here.
Yeah.
It
This
doesn't
was-
taste like whiskey, but
just
it does.
does not.
It lets you have like a drink where you feel like you're having
Yeah.
a drink, especially if you put it like in a rocks glass with some seltzer or something. It helps you not drink when you don't want to drink.
Well, today we're discussing entrepreneurship. I think it's an absolutely vital aspect of counter-economics, sort of inseparable, if you ask me. In my opinion, not all entrepreneurship is agorist, but all agorism is, in fact, entrepreneurial, right? It's one thing to grow your own food or to print your own guns or something like that, but it's another to grow food for the whole neighborhood or to print guns for the whole community. So let's get right into it. Why do you guys think, in your opinion, why is entrepreneurship such an important aspect of agorism? Anybody?
Not everybody at once.
I know.
Jump right
like,
in.
I'll share. I think entrepreneurship is critical because it gives people so much freedom, right? And with freedom comes great responsibility. But as liberty-minded folks, as agorists, really what we're seeking in large part is control over our lives, control over our destiny. And in running your own business, in being the master of your own financial universe and destiny, for that matter, then you really do have a lot of control and a lot of freedom. Like I'm sick right now, and it's been tough, and I'm going to be homeschooling my kiddos now. And because I'm an entrepreneur, I have the ability to do what's needed on my end, but I have a staff person at the office that's running the enterprise. So that really gives me a lot of freedom when there's choices and then when there's things you want to pursue in your life and you're entrepreneurial. You don't have a glass ceiling of a salary. If you're employed, ideally have a commission-based job so you can expand. But entrepreneurism gives you the ability to, okay, I want to add on to the house, or I got a big life crisis taking place. I need to double up, triple up my game. You can bring in that which you need in order to achieve your life's goals. So I think it's really important to have control over your life in general.
Yeah. It really helps decrease your dependency on the state. What do you guys think?
I think it also serves as a foundation for establishing close relationships and the kind of network that we all know that we need to have as agorists, right? Where you open up through trade, you set a base level of trust when you have a single interaction. And then over time, as you're growing your business, you tend to do business with the same people, especially from a vendor standpoint. And those relationships sometimes turn into friendships, sometimes they don't. But if you think about having the security of knowing how you can access things or supplies when perhaps the central supply system is down, entrepreneurs are well suited, I think, and well positioned to be able to tap sort of the counter economic side of that, because you have long-term trust that sets the foundation. So I see it opening lots of doors for working around the barriers that are in all of our lives.
Yeah, I find that if we're living in a Disneyland of, ideas that somebody has built, you're either a participant, meaning you've come to the theme park, or you're helping build the theme park. And it's a two distinct ways of thinking. And when you're on the side of building the theme park, you see the world in a completely different way. And it has to do with, I'm creating systems that other people will play in, and hopefully they bring value to them. And it gives me the freedom to operate. If I can see how the system works, it gives me the freedom to operate in and around it in the ways that best benefit my family.
To me, a big part of it is that it enables you to play in the real world, I guess, or the regulated world and the counter economics world at the same time with the most amount of flexibility. So I've given this analogy before, but like every movie you've ever watched that has like the mafia in it, they always got a legitimate business, right? So they have to have something that accounts for their ability to like acquire credit. They'll pay taxes on some piece of thing that they pay very little on because it barely makes any money, but they have some sort of a functioning business unit in the real world. And it, that's TV, but it's also based on some level of reality. And it's, to me, having been an employee at one time in my life and an entrepreneur for much longer, it's much easier to run a side hustle, if you want to call it that, or a cash money component as a business owner who's also doing that than it is to do that as an employee who's at somebody else's beck and call. Like, what are you doing? Why aren't you working for me? I mean, that's as an employer in the past too, I'm not like, I don't understand. If you're paying me, then I should be there. Now, I spent most of my life in sales, like I think John mentioned there. It is, or Sal, one of y'all mentioned, like that is the way to go if you're going to be employed, because generally speaking, when you're on a commission, especially most commission is your salary, if you make your numbers and you do well, that's kind of the deal. Like, it's a terrible job in some ways because you're always carrying that bag. But if you make the bag, well, leave him alone. He's bringing the business in. But it's still really kind of hard to be running all these little side hustles, especially below board side hustles, when you're working for somebody else. And in fact, if you are working for somebody else, I'd say that your side hustles are probably better off above board, because in that situation, you're probably never going to make money on paper. So it actually would take away from your income that you're being taxed on at work, which you have no control over otherwise. You can lose money for 5 years straight before you have to call it a hobby, right? They made the laws. All we do is use them. I mean, follow them. Yeah.
Where? Okay. All right. So now, like, maybe people are at home, they're thinking to themselves, well, how can I get started with entrepreneurship, right? I have like a day job and I'm working 9 to 5. I've got kids and stuff. John, I know you read a lot of entrepreneurship books and stuff like that. What sort of tips or suggestions do you have for people who are looking to get started with entrepreneurship?
Well, the first step is to make a decision. Make a commitment, right? This has a lot to do with the mindset, which is a huge component of successful entrepreneurship and success in every area of life. It's all about the mindset. I'm big on the law of attraction. That's a nice iteration of this whole phenomenon, right? So you make a decision, you commit. I'm going to do this. I know I can do this. I'm capable of doing this. I have great ideas. I have a great network. I'm going to do this and make it happen. So that's the first step, to make a decision. And then besides that, I would encourage people not to overthink it. I find a lot of people, they like, well, I got to write out this perfect business plan. I need a mentor first. I need to read all these books. I need to go get my MBA, for example. Really just want to dive in. And then there's a lot of tension between what you're passionate about, which is great and ideal. But sometimes what people are passionate about, there isn't a lot of demand for. And there isn't a marketplace for a lot of what people are passionate about. So I think ideally, if you can find something you're passionate about to make money on, that's great. But at the end of the day, find things that people want, find areas you can add value into people's lives. And then while I said not to overthink it, I mean, don't overthink it. Go ahead and get things going. It is good to study what works, emulate people that are doing it in your space, whatever area that ends up being. Study a whole lot about marketing. Because it's said that, like, if you're an entrepreneur, you're not in the business, like I'm not in the business of Kratom. I'm in the business of marketing Kratom. Or better yet, right. I'm in the business of marketing wellness and balance and a more holistic life, right? So that's just some stuff. Dive into it. Go hang out with some peeps. Don't overthink it. Make sure that you have the right product. And then come up with a good strategy to get that product to market and to scale it eventually, because you'll just stay plateaued and you'll get frustrated. And then you won't be like the business will be your master rather than you using the business as a means to an end. And then you got to take massive action. It can't just be, it's not just the law of attraction. It's not just a good idea or even a good product. You got to take massive action because the marketplace is pretty damn competitive, and it's a very beautiful thing, but you can get really disillusioned and beat up. So you got to stick with it, and it may be difficult at first, and you may not make any money. You may fail even a couple times, but just use it all as learning experiences and just keep going.
You will fail a lot of times, probably.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I've got kind of two ads on that one. Like when you said, like, a lot of times people are passionate about something, but there's not a market for it. I bet you could find one or two that would prove me wrong, but overall, I don't agree with that. If people are passionate about something, there's something to market in it. Like I was trying to think of something that would prove me wrong with that, and I was like, okay, well, breathing. Right, like I was thinking, unless it's completely free and everybody has.
There are literally courses on breathing.
I can teach people to breathe.
If they're not good at it,
there's at least 1,000 people that made freaking 6 figures last year with some sort of course that taught people how to breathe and meditate. So like, there's literally nothing. But what John's dead on about is, okay, so you have to figure out the monetization component of that that's actually marketable. And it's probably not going to be a good idea if it's something that 500 other people are making in a chop shop in China. Like it has to have some unique component. Sometimes that unique component is what John was talking about, though. The way you market it, you can sell the same thing as everybody else, but you market it, maybe it comes with information on how to use it differently. I mean, any of that. But then my other thing is always start designing with the end in mind, because you're talking about like becoming a slave to the business. You can become a slave to business that even is a really great business. It's really running well, and it even is doing exactly what you wanted it to do. It's just you didn't know that that's not what you really wanted.
Right.
So my past before TSP was I ran businesses with like 2,500 contractors all over the world. Well, that made lots of money, but it made me angry and miserable. So when I started TSP, I always wanted to keep it me, just me. My wife does like my booking and stuff, but I mean, like, really, like, I run the business. If I need something done, I contract it, it gets done, and then that person goes off and does other things. My buddy Brian Black at ITS Tactical, he started his business right about a year after mine. He built his totally different. He's building a staff. He has, I think, like 12 total people working from it. His business will be bigger than mine, but he wanted that. He knew that's what he wanted, and he was designing it to be that. And like there's neither one of those is wrong. But like I said, with permaculture, kind of, that design science infiltrating your business your whole life, one of the principles is design with the end in mind. So when it's successful, what will it look like? Because if you don't know that, you might be building something you don't really want. And what's your goal? Like if you want to sell a business, you probably want to build a business like Brian Black is building. You want a staff so that you can just sell it to somebody who just, there it is, it goes. If they screw it up, that's fine, but they're more likely to buy it. Like, who's going to buy TSP from me? Right? Because I am TSP. If I'm gone, like, what do you have? You have a domain name. Well, Mark Cuban sold a domain name for $4 billion. So I guess
Nick Ferguson does a pretty good Jack impression.
He does. He does.
The guy that did our theme song could probably pull it off. They sounded identical. I was convinced it was Jack.
I do not sound like that when I sing, man.
One thing I think is important is to use the tools that you have available to you. And like nowadays we're in the digital age. So like use the internet. Like you can contact suppliers in China or India. You can hire people on freelance or Upwork for like $2 an hour. You have a whole market at your fingertips. So use the resources that are available to you. Another thing I think is important is the difference between infopreneurship and entrepreneurship. Like everybody on this Zoom call right now is lucky because we really, our main commodity is really information. I mean, John sells Creative, I sell 3D printers, but really we're pushing information about agorism and freedom and liberty and counter economics, or, in Nicole's case, it's homesteading, or in X's case, it's blockchain or survivalism, whatever it is. Like that is really the commodity of the future, in my opinion, is knowledge, and not really any sort of physical good.
Yeah, there's a lot of people making their whole living just on having online courses, like Kajabi style courses, where learn how to breathe in this $12,000 project, in this $12,000 course, over the course of the year. But it's true. It's like you can either sell a good, a service, or an education. And I guess you could consider education a service, but in today's world, you have literally the whole world is your market now. You're not relegated to making a brick and mortar business for your town where you have to go source goods and bring them or clean people's houses or whatever your service might be. Now you literally have an entire world that could be your market.
And don't be limited. Like when we were just talking about information here, like I was thinking, we homeschool my grandkids now, and we augment their curriculum from Excelis with this thing called OutSchool. And there's all kinds of courses on all types of things, and they're all conducted on freaking Zoom. And and they're like 10 or 20 bucks a course. But there'll be like 8, 12, 15 kids in a 1 hour. Well, you know that like there's no building that's like the OutSchool headquarters. Like this is like the Airbnb of like teachers. Like everybody sets up their own stuff. I'm guaranteeing, I didn't look into this, but I mean, I just know they're all independent. You probably can go create courses for OutSchool. And if you have something like, and the people that do it for like, because there's a like up to like high school level and down to young kids, but like my granddaughter, she's 4.5, and the people that do those, they're just having a blast playing with kids, but they're good at what they do, man. And like, so that would be one way to do information, but like, don't be limited. Don't think you have to emulate what somebody else is doing. Like one of our expert council members at TSP, Tim, the Toolman Cook, man, he's a handyman and he's crushing it. Anytime I've moved somewhere, the first thing I need, because I don't have time to do all the crap on my property, is a good handyman. Like, so like there's another business. I have a friend of mine from New Jersey. I don't know how she's doing with it now because they have Rover, which is like Uber for pet sitters, but she had a pet sitting business. She was knocking like $85K a year back, like watching people's dogs and cats and shit. Like there's so much that you can do because anything that somebody feels like they don't want to do, they'll pay you to do so they don't have to.
Yeah.
There are people who read books for a living.
Yeah.
Into a microphone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They all sound like what's his name?
Morgan Freeman.
That's it. There it
That's
is.
it. No, they don't.
Voice.
But yeah.
No, they don't.
Well, running a business is time consuming. One of the things that I found is that people are like, oh, you'll have so much more free time when you're working for yourself. That was a load of shit, man. I have less
Xavier,
time
what time
now.
do you get up to make baseline?
Yeah.
There's not enough hours in the day, but the fact is like I love what I'm doing, so it doesn't feel like work. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I feel so passionate about it that it's like I would want to do it even if I wasn't getting paid.
Don't I like getting paid?
Yeah,
A
totally.
lifestyle to maintain here, guys.
Well, and back to the point of know where you want to go with your business. If where you want to land as a successful entrepreneur is I have X number of hours off or I have more free time, then
Valid.
you have to ultimately build it that way. But I don't know if you'll ever get there if you don't push through that one hump that everybody always runs into when you're starting a business.
Yeah.
Sometimes turns into 2 humps, but yeah, it's if you know that's what you want, then you need to demand it from your organization or from whatever you're building, or you'll never get it.
Or like you said, you design it into it. Like, I mean, I could. Part of it is like, how driven are you? Like, you might find that even though you would like less time, like you won't let yourself do it. I could run my show 4 days a week, and nobody would like be, oh, screw him, I'm not listening anymore. Like, no one would lose their shit over it, but like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to get up and I mean, that's what made me successful. I want to produce a show every day. And what I find is like, I really needed the holiday shutdown that we had, but by the end of it, it was like,
I'm ready to get back.
I need to do something. Like, it's winter. I can only do so much outside. It's snowing. Because it snowed here. So
that
I guess
stuff's terrible.
Global warming,
that white devil dust.
The damn.
I just want to make sure we get censored on YouTube tonight. That's why I said that.
Okay.
We have a question from the YouTube channel, and it's from Dennis Charles. What's one skill you would initially suggest entrepreneurs focus on initially?
One skill that they should focus on, I would say, is going back to what John said earlier, is marketing, right? Because whatever you're pushing, whatever good or service you're pushing, you have to market it. And most of online entrepreneurship really comes down to just a matter of marketing. So that's what I would suggest.
And when you said infopreneurship, Sal, I thought about, like I sell a lot of coffee because I have a podcast. that doesn't mean you need to go have a podcast per se, but if you,
sure
I think
helps.
if you approach your marketing from an information connection standpoint, it's a pretty good template to just go with on marketing, which is I'm teaching you something, and by the way, you can buy this other thing. And
Yeah.
that really
Value
helps.
marketing, education.
And if you don't want to buy it, I'm not going to call you a poopy head, right?
And I'm not going to tell you I'm going to find out you didn't buy, so I'm going to
Right,
block you.
right.
You
So
can't
it's
listen to
just
my
like
podcast.
you have to
Right.
come at it from honestly wanting to help people and not just like
Yeah.
totally
Right. You have to be
plasticky
genuine.
stuff. But it's a great way, I think, to have a genuine connection with your customer over time, and to learn what they want, because you get that interaction back and forth. But I was going to also say, if you haven't learned the basics of how to track your finances or some skill like
Yeah.
that,
know what your margin
Which-
is.
they don't teach you in school necessarily if you didn't seek
No,
out
not
courses.
public school.
Start learning that too. Learn about basic bookkeeping and how to use a
Sell. Just
spreadsheet.
basic how to
and-
build a model.
You know, I pay a CPA, but and there are automated tools for like bringing all the expenses in from your bank accounts and stuff. But last year, because I was struggling with bookkeeping and keeping up with it, I did it 100% manually to figure out why the automated tools weren't working. And then I figured out, okay, now I know what I need from the tool, right? So sometimes it's not bad to go back and do those things that you would normally outsource just to make sure you understand how it's all working, because then that's the foundation from which you're going to make decisions in the future. If you have that foundation really dialed in, you're not going to be as miserable later.
That's a good point. There's a strategy where you do the role first, right? Because it's often you, unless you have some seed funding or you save up for it. And as you're doing it, you try to master it. You try to understand the ins and outs, and then you write down what it is that you're doing. And what you're doing is creating an SOP, standard operating
Mhm.
procedure, that you can then train the next person on. And so go through, wear all the hats, figure out things. And then also you can know if they're screwing you or if they're slacking because
Yeah.
They're full
Your
of
language.
crap.
But the delegating and outsourcing is absolutely critical if you are to scale. Some people want to do the solopreneur thing, but yeah, marketing is absolutely critical, and having sales skills, knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to present an offer, which is probably more marketing, but also knowing how to close the deal, which I've been really pounded on this Grant Cardone guy. He's one of the big guys that's influenced me and helped me to take it to another level. Grant Cardone is the 10X stuff. He's all about the sales and the 10X and closing. So you have to have those skills in place in order to add value. And it's challenging with the internet stuff, because like I'm my girlfriend's selling these 6-figure tiny homes, and I'm over here wanting to sell big ticket items, but I'm dealing with online and stuff. I'm not doing the wholesale. So, but if you have an online store as well, there's also sales copy and language
Yeah.
and flows and a sales process that you need to be conscious of. So be conscious of the sales process, making it easy, closing the deal, asking for the sale, giving the information that's necessary.
Yeah, that's why I kind of vacillated. Like when you said one, I'm like, ugh, because for me, sales and marketing are very different disciplines because they are. And I try to always take something that's a complex thing and break it down to the simplest absolute definition that I can. So to me, marketing is telling your story. That's all marketing is, telling a story, because it generates interest. And that's what a marketer does. They generate interest. So the person wants to know more. Sales is a transfer of belief. That's all you have to do to sell somebody. If they have the means and the need and you transfer the belief, they'll buy. What's interesting, though, is we all are involved with podcasting, not just together, but independently. And I believe that every person here would say it helps their business. And the reason it helps your business is I believe that audio is the most powerful form of marketing that we have for a variety of reasons. But number one is that you can multitask and listen to audio. You can't really give reading or video your full attention and do something totally different. But we have people listen to our shows. I know all of us do. They listen at the gym. They listen driving in a car. They listen while they're collating and stapling at the office space, right? Like they multitask and listen to you. But the other thing is, if you do something regularly all the time and you're dependable and you're going to be there, if they stick around and keep listening to you for any length of time, you become their friend. Like they feel like you meet people and like, I feel like I know you, and they feel like it's a little bit weird. And I guess it can be, but that's because they feel like they know you. So over time you develop trust, right? And that's why I always teach salespeople to go after their warm market first, because they have trust there. Now, if you're selling shit, you ruin that. But if you're selling good things to your warm market, they love you. And then what do? They you expand that warm market. So to me, I think like marketing and sales are different. But if you're a small time entrepreneur, unlike a company with even a dozen people, you can't have a marketing person and a salesperson. You have to do both sides of that discipline. And a lot of times people are great marketers and they're terrible salespeople. They can generate all kinds of interest, but like John said, they can't close that freaking deal. If you can't get that person to pick the pen up or click the button and enter the credit card number or the Bitcoin number or whatever, you have a lot of traffic, but you don't have conversions, and you got to work those conversions. The good thing is in our society today, unlike when I was coming up in this, if you build your website right, it can be your salesperson. It can do the closing for you. It can upsell.
And it works 24/7.
Yeah. Like if you're selling a product, like if you're selling info products, to me, you should have expensive ones and cheap ones. And you should try to generate interest with some free thing. And then when they buy that, you try to sell them the expensive thing. And when they say no, you immediately try to sell them the small thing. And when they say no to that, you're saying, okay, but here's what I promised you, which is like 12 follow-up pieces. And then I'm going to try to sell to you again on about the 7th. Yeah. Right. And then I'm going to try to sell to you again on the 9th. Right. And instead of forgetting, I have 1,000 people in that process at different places in sales funnels, and everything's automated. Yep. And that's something that we can do today that you just could not do 20 years ago. It was hard to do.
Well, that's how you cast the net to a large global audience, right? You can't manage all those people, but you can now. I would say the one skill I would initially suggest entrepreneurs focus on would be discipline, self-discipline, because you can't be like, oh, I think I'm going to do it today. Maybe I won't tomorrow. You know, you have to have like a rhythm and a rhyme and a reason for everything that you're doing. And if you don't have that initial discipline, then like don't start, you know, stick with the discipline of your job. And then once you know how to have discipline with that, then apply it to what you want it to be. That would be my opinion.
Have y'all noticed sometimes that people that come from they've always worked for somebody else, they do lots of work, but none of it's productive when they get into their own business?
Yep.
And I think the problem with that is like, you can be a good employee if you maintain the minimum productivity threshold. And then there's one other key to being a good employee. Never have your boss's boss come after your boss because of something you did. Right. if you do those two things, you can retire. Right. Mm-hmm. If your boss never hears his name if you never hears your name from his boss in a bad way, you're golden, right? Like that. You can even get in trouble with your boss. As long as he doesn't get in trouble, it's okay. And so people like, as long as I'm meeting my productivity threshold, which in an office might be collating and listening to the music at a reasonable volume and standing at the coffee machine and playing Tetris, and then actually doing 3 or 4 hours of work in an 8-hour day. Like at home, you might actually be doing all work instead of screwing off, but it might be all pointless. It might have nothing to do connected with revenue. And I see a lot of times people that come from the corporate world, but their job wasn't directly tied to revenue. They don't really understand you have to execute. Like, I think if you come out of a sales environment, the beauty of that is you were like the infantry. Like, so the rest of business exists when you're in sales to support your job, because without you, you don't shoot people. Nobody dies. Nobody makes a sale. Everybody's fired. Right. So you come with that kind of gunslinger mentality where a lot of people like, that's what's hurting. You gotta convert. Like, it's okay if I don't make money for 2 years. No, it's not. No, it's not. You don't have a business then. Right.
Unless you have a lot of capital.
Yeah. It's still not okay.
Yeah.
You'll lose the capital.
Unless you're in that line, like if you're like in multi-million-dollar venture capital territory, like that's not about making money. That's about growth. As long as you have growth, you're good.
Another key of all this, I think, is something that you mentioned, Jack, on my podcast yesterday, which is, I forget what the word you used for it was like real estate arbitrage. And like you mentioned, like you can like move somewhere cheaper and you can get by on less. So maybe your business isn't, you can't sustain yourself in Lower Manhattan, but maybe you are sustainable in, rural Texas or something like that. So that's another key aspect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's something people's done for a long time, going to other countries and doing geographic arbitrage, right?
Right.
But when you look at our country, it's so large and so diverse that you don't have to leave this country to practice, that geo arbitrage concept. That's something I got a long time ago. I've always known it intrinsically because it's obvious. But Tim Ferriss's work like was really heavy on that, but it was really heavy on like going and living in Thailand or something, and it's like, I don't want dysentery and I don't want to get shivved and have my ear sent home to my family. I think I'd be better off staying here in the United States.
Party pooper.
I don't know if I feel that way anymore. I might be safer in Thailand now. Who knows? But you can go to places in this country and you can save a ton of money just on property costs alone. Not to mention, like Arkansas has like if over 35 grand, your state income tax is 7%. That's high. Texas has 0. Tennessee has 0. Where Sal is in Florida has 0. John's in Texas with me. We have 0.
That's actually why he left.
Xavier's the only one paying freaking state income tax.
No, I'm in Florida.
He's
Oh,
in
you're in Florida. Okay. I thought you were in Carolina.
No,
He
my farm-
visits there sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, we all live in states where we don't pay any state income tax now.
That's why we chose them.
Nice.
Yeah.
True agorists.
True story. I grew up in Florida, and when I got married and moved to North Carolina, I didn't pay state income tax
You
because
know what it was.
I didn't know that it existed.
Well
I
played.
was like, what the fuck is this shit?
I didn't pay it when I knew it existed.
I grew
That
up in
boy.
Oregon and we didn't have sales tax, and I was just like, it was hard for the first little while.
I've got a buddy who goes up to Humboldt County in California. If there's a documentary on like Netflix or Amazon, it's called Murder Mountain, and they grow pot and they trim weed in the mountains in California.
With AK-47.
Yeah, and they make a shit ton of money. And then he goes to Ecuador and he lives the rest of his life, rest of the year in Ecuador on the beach for next to nothing. And he's a normal white guy like the rest of us. He's not like an Ecuadorian, so
I just became a man. Thanks.
Nice.
Well, that's his privilege, right? That's how he's able to do that.
We lived
Entrepreneurship.
in Acapulco for like 5 months. And my business was running. I had outsourced the shipping, and I paid someone to do the packaging and stuff. And that was great because every US dollar got us like $1.50 or $1.60 worth of purchasing power. So lived in a great big house right on the beach. And if you set yourself up as an entrepreneur and you position yourself so you can do the digital nomad thing, then that's a lot of freedom. You have the freedom to do that. If you're stuck to a pension or a 40-hour a week gig and you don't want to get penalties or lose your job, then it's a little bit more difficult. I will say though that since returning and sticking in the same spot for quite some time and kind of deciding to hunker down here and focus on my business and try to get some more stability instead of going all over the place, my business has been able to expand immensely. And I could do a travel thing or a digital nomad thing, but I don't think I would be able to be as revenue positive or as successful doing that, because you really just got to hammer down. And like y'all were referencing earlier, I enjoy my job. I like helping people. I like putting out content, writing emails. I like doing the numbers and seeing how I've grown and stuff. So I want to put more time. I don't even know, like, if I'm not the type of person that if I won the lottery or something, I would just go retire. I'd be like, wow, what am I going to use all this money for? We can do some cool shit now.
Yeah, and that's why you have money though, because that's how you think. Like that's, I think, one of the big differences between entrepreneurs and employees. And I don't mean just in class, but I mean in mindset, because there are employees that are very entrepreneurial. Like, and if you can find one to work for you, you're freaking lucky, right?
Good luck.
And all you think the entire time is he's going to leave.
Yeah.
I know he's gonna, like I can maybe get 2 years out of this guy. It's going to be great, but he's going to leave.
Give him a
He's gonna
raise.
go to someone that's going to pay him what I can't afford to, or he's going to do his own thing. Like, especially like when I came up in like web marketing and stuff like that, like you get somebody that's good at SEO and you're like, I got 6 months to use this person because they're going to freaking like figure out that they can do this shit on their own and they're going to leave.
Mhm.
Now on the, like going to other countries, if I didn't have such strong family roots, it would be very tempting to set up residency in Costa Rica. They have a really kind of quick on-ramp down there where if you capitalize $250,000, now, unlike a lot of places where you have to buy your citizenship, you just basically capitalize it. And that means you deposit it in a Costa Rican bank in your name. That's all you got to do. And then you can borrow against it to buy a house for your mortgage. So it's not actually gone. And if you do that for 2 years, you get full residency there. And just by doing that, I could put about $60,000 to $70,000 a year back in my pocket from taxes I wouldn't pay, because under $500,000, there's no income tax in Costa Rica.
Nice.
They don't have it. It's not a thing. Like,
I
so
was
what's
Co-
that?
Puerto
no,
Rico.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
suggest people get their money out of the bank in order to start a business and put your money into cryptocurrency and let it accumulate so you have enough capital to
This
make
is
the
other
initial
money. I already
investment.
did that. So now I have other money, right? Like, well, if you got, you're gonna have to go buy a
Well-
house anyway, right? So basically, you like, I would sell my house, take most of the capital from there, capitalize it into the bank, and then use it to buy the house.
Well, you
Like,
already have a
same but
successful
different.
business. I'm talking about somebody like just starting out. You
No,
know?
don't do that. We're talking about like, what do you do to hide your money once you get successful, right?
Right.
Because
You,
like,
you sink it on
I
a
don't
boat.
hide any money.
you know, all I'm
Yeah.
going to say is if Edward Snowden had done this, or not Snowden, what's his name? Assange. If Assange did that in
Yeah.
Costa Rica, the only thing they'll extradite you for there is murder. So he'd be on the beach right now instead of in prison if he went to
With
Costa Rica
Epstein.
instead of England.
And Paul
Yeah.
McCartney.
So
Well, you know, there has been discussion in my household and neighborhood about if stuff really gets bad, which country are we going to? So
If stuff gets bad.
I'm going to the
Wait a
Republic
second.
of Texas. That's my country.
I might have to as well. Maybe I should buy
Yeah.
some land down
Yeah,
there.
join us. I'm moving 45 minutes east or just further away from Austin, but I'm hunkering down here. I think shit is bad. It's nuts. It's crazy.
It is.
Wow. And it's only like we've been saying how crazy it is since we started the podcast, right? We
Yeah,
started
then you're like, no,
podcast
now
with-
it's really
oh,
crazy.
now this week it's even crazier.
We
Wow.
Another
sounded
year or
paranoid
two.
last week. Now we don't sound so paranoid anymore.
Oh my god.
Another 18 months into the central banking collapse is going to be really interesting.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I guess if you have a salary, right? A lot of times you get a salary and there's like a contract and you have
Mhm.
evaluations, but sometimes they are, 6 months, 2 years, whatever. If your salary's capped and inflation starts just flying, like this guy Saylor, the Michael Saylor guy, one of these big hedge fund guys that are throwing in tons and tons of money. I think that's what Michael Saylor's the name.
Yeah.
Is really a good evangelist, but he was saying
Micro strategy.
the M2 money supply is being expanded by 15% every year moving forward. And it's like out of this world. So if you have a salary and inflation's happening, then it's going to be hard to keep up. If you're an entrepreneur and inflation's happening, as long as you're growing value and scaling, then at least you're not going to have as much of your wealth etched
You're
away.
able to maintain a little bit better, right?
It's also a
And you're
place where
stacking crypto, of course, and you're receiving
Of course,
crypto
yeah.
for goods
you
and
want to
services.
strategically own property if inflation's coming, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
property
you're,
stock.
you're locked in at that. Even if you're leveraged with debt and mortgage, you're leveraged at this much lower value.
Yep.
And then when I say strategic, you just want to make sure you're not in a place where you're going to end up paying like 20 grand a year in property tax. Because then it doesn't matter how low your mortgage is, right? You know, you're renting your house from the state. So you have to be in places where you can limit that upward. I know people in New Jersey where Sal was for however long that have like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on like a third of an acre. And it's nice, but it's not that nice. And they're paying like 16.5 a year in property.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Have
That's
you ever
common.
heard of the way of getting out of paying property tax? In some states, you can actually buy like a 5-year bond or something like that. Pay 5 years worth of tax on your property all at once in the form of a bond, and then you don't have to pay property tax anymore. I don't know the exact procedure, but there is a way to do that in some states.
Also
There's
get
the alloidial
livestock.
title thing.
What's that?
Alloidial title.
Something like that.
There's all those sorts of, a lot of this stuff is in that whole sovereign citizen universe vein, where
Mhm.
even if there are some merits there and some other way of interpreting the law, the de jure law, the real law,
Yeah.
not the de facto corporate UCC stuff, oftentimes the judges are like, we don't buy into that stuff.
Yeah,
We're
Right.
just
I worry
slamming
about
it on
that
you
stuff
anyway.
with our buddy Curtis sometimes. You could tell me there's 2 different laws, but I know the one they're going to freaking use when I'm standing in
Yeah,
front of
yeah.
Cops
them, and
follow.
it ain't that one.
Yeah.
But you
Man.
have
All
heard of that. You have heard of that, and you think it's one of those like one of those other laws.
I haven't
I
heard of
don't
the
know if it's
bond
a
thing, but the
bond.
alloidial
Look that
title,
up.
that's a thing. There's a Freedom Cell group in Central Texas that was all gung-ho about it. They're all exploring that.
I mean, if there is a
Title.
bond, it comes from the state, right? So if that's
Right.
the case, then maybe.
And then if it's because that would tell me your interest is paying your tax.
But that would also tell me, like, okay, so then that'd be a lot of interest. That'd be 20%.
That'd be a lot.
Yeah.
Right. But see, even with that, like, okay, well, what property tax? Your city,
Exactly.
your county, your state, right? Your school, your hospital. Like, there's like the property tax bill is actually this it's a bunch of hands stealing your shit, right? But okay, we're talking about entrepreneurship. Like, if there is anything to that, if there is a proper way to do it, there's probably a business in teaching people how, right?
Yeah.
Or a business in saying, don't do that because you're going to go to prison, right? Like, here's other ways to save money.
Right.
Don't do that, right? Like, providing information has value. It really does. Like, because if that's legit, I'll totally pay 5 years of property tax if I don't have to
Right.
pay.
I
Now.
in my mind and said, oh, I want to remember that when I can, and then I forgot what it was.
Might be too
That's
good
why
to
you
be
need a
true.
PA.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we have about 30, 40 minutes left. Let's go over some specific strategies. Drop shipping, private label. What do you guys think are some good ways for people to get started? I private label 3D printers, and I drop ship shirts. What do you guys, what's your experience with different strategies and methods of entrepreneurship?
I mean, I sell a immaterial product that's technically a service, and that also helps me with, since it's a service in Texas, I don't have to collect sales tax on it. That's one less thing I have to do. And what I love about doing that is if my business exploded 10 times over, I don't know that I'd have to do anything, but if I did, I would like get another server and load share like that. I mean, my business can scale revenue wise infinitely with I don't have to work any harder, right? I'm gonna have to work harder to get more people in the door, but I don't have to work harder to service more people. And I know almost everybody else here does a physical product. I love not doing a physical product. I think there's some real advantages to physical product. They're hard to like copy. You can be more unique. You can have more touch with the customer. But the fact that I sell mostly a membership is great in my opinion, because I don't ever worry if like something got lost in the mail, or even like occasionally, like I have people that'll pay me in silver or something like that. And it's like a membership's like 2 ounces. And like sometimes they'll send me the silver and some thieving bastard in the post office will steal it. I just freaking give them their membership. I don't even tell them it happened, like it's just the customer's worth more to me for the relationship.
Right.
A couple ounces of silver. So it makes things easier. If you get like a really shitty pain in the ass customer, you just delete their account, give them their money back and tell them to go screw. Like it's so much easier. There's so many things I don't do because I don't do physical product, but I know I give some things up in not doing physical product.
Digital products are really key because, like you said, there's no overhead whatsoever. So books, courses, videos, whatever you can think of is a great idea. What about you guys?
Well, I would say the biggest mistake I see people making to become entrepreneurs is they start out saying, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. And their motivation is becoming an entrepreneur rather than I'm going to find a problem and solve it for money. To oversimplify it, it's just, I think when we start down this road of how do we tangibly become an entrepreneur, you have to find your jam and you have to monetize it. And that's, when you hear that and you haven't found your jam and you haven't started anything, it sounds overly simplistic, but it's literally that simple. And the best way to find your jam is just fucking start.
Do it.
Just
Make the
fucking
jump.
start and figure it out. And don't figure out all the answers to all the questions at the beginning before you start. Otherwise, you're never going to start.
Yeah. Experiences.
No,
Your answers will be wrong, by the way. You're gonna
Right.
You're going from the ground up, though.
get on doing it, right? Like,
So the biggest so it is possible to go into a business and buy, a franchise or something and just go with that and it's ready made and ready to go. But do you know how many people start that and then meh? And that's because they didn't find their jam. So they didn't, to Xavier's point, they didn't have the discipline to get up and make the pizza every day. They bought a pizza franchise. They didn't.
I'm to make the donuts.
They didn't figure. I mean, like literally, that's how I feel all of December. Time to roast the coffee. I
Yeah.
roasted the coffee. That's it. It's part of it, and I actually kind of love that because I get to look back on that time and be really glad it's over. And even during it, I'm enjoying myself. But that's part of, I think, building something. But if you're only doing it to be an entrepreneur and not doing it for another motivation, I think you're not going to make it through.
It's not going to work.
Right. Like if you're doing
John
it because
X.
you're panicked because our economy is falling apart, that's the wrong reason.
Yeah,
That may
you have
be
to be
something that helps you get started faster, but yeah.
Right.
you have to be full of optimism to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You can't be an entrepreneur out of fear. I mean, I guess some people sort of succeed because they have no choice. They're kind of thrown into it. Like I lost my job, so I started staining fences or something. Like that'll happen. But honestly, if you want to grow a business, if you want to grow a brand, you have to be enthusiastic. You have to be overly optimistic. And like it's very similar to the sales world. And one of my old sales mentors one time sat me down with a beer when I was really young, and he said, you know, the thing about sales, Jack, is that you get really, really excited over itty bitty piddly little shit. And then you get really depressed over itty bitty piddly little shit. And the mastery will come when you learn how to harness the excitement, even though it's piddly little shit, but you learn how to not be depressed over the piddly little shit that went the wrong way. And you
Learn
just
from it.
let that go, you learn from it, and you move on. You know, he was a pretty good dude. And that's like, of all the things that he told me, one of them that really stuck.
Yeah, mindset's everything. Jack remembers everything. He's got so many little tidbits of wisdom stored away in that little brain there of his, that big brain of his, I should say.
It's a big head. I
He
got
does kind of have a big head.
I do something with the space.
Yeah, man. It's
I got something that was a huge eureka for me and really helped me take my business to another level. And kind of to tie it back to your question, Sal, whether someone's selling a good or a service or a digital good or their strategies drop shipping or whatever, right? We've already really emphasized marketing, but one of the big strategies that really stuck for me, I learned from Russell Brunson, and Jack kind of referenced this earlier, like starting with a lower cost item and then working them up as there's trust with upsells and stuff. But it's this concept of a value ladder. And so imagine a staircase or a ladder, and your client, I like to call them clients instead of customers. Customers, transactional, client is like a relationship based on adding value to one another. And so you start with something that's very low cost, low barrier to entry because there's low trust. And there's an expression like, when you first go on a date, you don't try to invite the woman right to bed, right? Unless it's the high school days and the college days. I'm just kidding. But you try to build that trust. I don't know, maybe a hug, maybe a kiss at the end of the meal, whatever. And so you start with something low cost, like a free report or a free ounce of kratom or a free trial to the membership program, right? Or a free small amount of coffee that you could send someone. And so you're doing this, they're getting some value, they're learning to trust you, they are sharing their contact information with you for you to follow up with them. If they actually buy something like a $5 free ounce of kratom, paying for shipping, then they're trusting you with their purchase information. You do a successful transaction, right? Then you continue to follow up, you continue to build value and trust, and then you work them up the value ladder, ultimately a high ticket item if that works into your business or whatever. So like Jack works people up to the membership. They're like, oh, wow, this is great. I'm getting a lot of value from this. Maybe I'll try one of these workshops, which is a higher ticket value, bigger commitment, coming out to the dude's property, spending a weekend there, you know? And so I think that's something that can be implied in everyone's business. A lot of people, if you're new on the scene, you don't have reviews, they may not buy the $80 product or even the $25 product. But if you start, even if you deliver on a free report, which costs nothing, and you get their contact information and you follow up, you delivered on the report, you delivered on the value, then you can continue that relationship. So always try to think about what kind of, it's called what's it called? Well, it's called bait, which is kind of like a really strong salesy way, but it's called a lead magnet. So you throw out a lead magnet, people give you their contact information, and then you work your way up through trust. That's something, the free ounce, that really helped catapult my business, because all of a sudden people are like, kratom, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I don't want to spend $20 or $100 on a half kilo or whatever, but I will try it for free. What do I have to lose? And it just dramatically expands the client base.
And they like it and they buy more, and then they buy more for their friends. And next thing you know, they're a regular returning customer.
Yeah. Or they get on a continuity program.
Right.
This guy, Russell Brunson, that's where I learned all these strategies from. He has .com secrets, expert secrets, and traffic secrets. Russell Brunson is like the marketing whiz guru. If anybody's struggling with marketing, just do what he does. And as long as you have a good product, you'll be successful with it.
I want to get into resource. Go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, when you're formulating all these strategies, it's important to understand the motivation of your buyer. And so you can like break down things that seem really complex and seem like there's 1,000 answers to 2 or 3. Like when we say, what kind of, why do people buy products? They either buy products because they need them or they want them. That's it. Right. We're all in the business of selling to the want. You have to be multi-billion level company to sell specifically to a need. You might sell food, but you might sell coffee. Like, so people go to the store because they need food, they buy coffee, but they're not buying Nicole's coffee, right? They're not buying $18 a pound coffee. They're buying Folgers. She's selling to a want because people want something that was custom roasted with a story behind it. So we know we're selling to a want. Then once you do that, people buy because something is profitable to them. And that doesn't necessarily mean money, but they have a gain from it. They buy it because it's educational, or they buy it because it's life altering. There's no other reason people buy something that they want. It's going to be one of those 3 things in some way. And I call that the golden trifecta of product marketing. If you can market something that people perceive as educational, profitable, and life-changing all at the same time, you have a home run. And that, like, if you really want to market a product well, and that's why podcasting works so well, because the product you're selling becomes part of the podcast. That's the education and the entertainment. So you've already got that, right? So now if you can bring in some level of profitability or life-changing force with that, you have an incredible marketing tool. And that's why I love doing audio marketing. And that's why I'm able to form, like Nicole's said before, when we've done workshops where we've talked about like, business Kickstarters and stuff like that. And like, I can just listen to somebody for like 5 minutes and here's your message.
Yeah.
But that's why I can do that, because I'm making it that simple and it's saying, well, how does this apply to that? And if you do that, then you can do that for yourself, right? And then once you can do that, then you have very clear articulated messaging behind what you're selling and why the person should buy it. And some bitch, if people don't actually buy things when they understand what it is and why they should buy it. And I know, like, people go to school for 5 years and no one ever freaking tells them that. And like in an MBA course for marketing and sales, they never learn those 2 minutes that I just gave you right there. And it drives me freaking nuts because it is that simple, but everybody wants to make shit complicated so they can justify initials after their name or some shit like that.
Well, that's the key. That's what's so great about Agorism. What were the 3 things you just listed there?
It's either going to be life-changing, profitable, or entertaining. That's
notice how all counter economic activity checks all of those boxes, right? You're talking about like like how podcasting makes it easier, but that's not really the case. It's more like you are an infopreneur when it comes to surviving, right? And now any product you have on top of that is geared towards that. I do Agorism and I sell 3D printing. It's all related. Kratom is related to what John does, All right, we have a bunch of questions from YouTube actually. What is the best print-on-demand shirt company? I use Printful, guys, at SolveYourWorst.com. We're expanding into AgoraThreads.com. It's just this is the one that I use because I think it's the highest quality products. Anybody else have any input on that, or?
What did you say? I need to do that, honestly.
Printful.
Printful?
That's what
Printful.
did the Spirko 2020 stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can use Printify or Teespring, but in my experience, Printful, it's a little bit more expensive, but it has higher quality shirts. It's like you're gonna wash it once and it's not gonna lose its size and shape, So
That's
I used Gallery.com, GALLOREE.com.
Oh, okay.
Those guys are owned by the Communist Party in China, CCP.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Saw an article on Breitbart.
That's
That's
it.
I'm just kidding.
Tommy.
I'm just messing with you.
I thought so. I was
Maybe
like, what?
using Printful next week.
I'm messing with you.
Is that where you get your wigs from, Xavier?
There's actually a sister store down on the corner, and all they do is sell wigs. And like all of a sudden, I'm like the only white guy that's ever gone in there, I think. And they're like, "What you doing in here, boy?" I'm like, "All right, just listen, just hear me out. I'm gonna dress up like Jesus, okay, for a skit that I'm doing." And they're like, "Are you kidding? Do you believe in Jesus?"
Nice.
So yeah. So Gallery, they have not just shirts, but like you can print canvases. So if you want to like put up artwork, they do coffee mugs, like all the stuff, all the things. Yeah.
Okay.
I think in answer to also what's the best
Not
one, it
great.
does also Like,
not great customer service, gotta say.
yeah, it depends on what you want to, because I know I print a lot of coffee mugs, shockingly, and a lot of those print on demand prints on mugs will wash off in the dishwasher over time.
Right.
So if you're looking for
Right.
like higher quality stuff, you're gonna have to poke around.
But that gives us that 80s vintage Star Wars cup from McDonald's effect,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I can get you that with Hollow Roast wearing off.
There you
anytime.
go.
Blue, red, or green.
I think it's a good principle is to err on the side of quality over
Mhm.
cost saving. It's going to
Yeah.
save you a lot of headache. It's going to save you a lot of customer service issues, but you're going to have a reputation where they can expect to get good stuff out of you. And really, life's too short to have shitty stuff, you
It's your
know?
business. You want to offer a product that you can stand behind, that you're proud of, not something that you're embarrassed about.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to make an
Yes.
extra 5 points or 10.
Right. It's not
I
worth
have-
it.
I have a question for you guys that just popped up. Each of us have a podcast or of some sort. How long did it take you to get to the point where you felt like, yeah, this is working? You know what I mean? Like, what was the figure? Did you have a figure in your head about how many people would be listening? You know, because I just saw somebody in the YouTube chat saying, I've got an idea to start a new podcast. And then I was like, ooh, you know, you got to commit. You can't just be like, I'm going to try this out. Because, you know, for me, in my mind, I'm like, I'm just going to do baseline till I die now. I don't care anymore, you know? And I actually didn't care whether it was going to be successful or not. It was more about the fact of doing it and finally going for it, I guess. And fully
That's the
committed.
key.
Schumann resonances in the third floor.
You know?
It's so gold.
So
Yeah.
it's like the Eye of Sauron.
But like now, at first, like I would get like a couple hundred views, and that was it. And I was like, I thought I was gonna be famous, and you know, like
Now you
Like,
are.
but that was the wrong metric. Like I didn't care. Like I got to, I didn't really care where I was at, but I thought I'd do like a lot better at first. But like it really takes time. And then I found something like I actually am enjoying having just a few people really into it and being able to converse with them and build
Yeah.
deep relationships.
Yeah.
Because like if it gets like really huge, it's like how do you manage all those folks and those
That
relationships?
is the magic early
Quality.
on, is when
Yeah.
your feedback from your people is manageable to where you can give a legitimate response to everything you get. And that's like
I comment to everybody. Anybody who comments on any of them,
Yeah.
on any,
He
like,
does.
that
2 hours a
Treat
day
your
doing it.
business like you had a baby.
Yeah.
Like, and that infant toddler stage is a lot of work, but it's going to go so fast. And that kid's going to be out the door and like, bye dad, gone. And
Right.
like, you got to cherish that. And that will actually make, just if you cherish it with a kid, it'll make your child successful as they grow. If you cherish it in your business, it'll make your business successful as it grows. For me, I mean, I came out of the gate with like, 10 people after a month. And I was like, wow, this is great. I
Right,
mean,
right.
it was like, that was fine, And so I ended up running a contest to grow the show. And I said, if we got to 1,000 people by the end of the first year, which was like 6 months, that I would give away an iPod. That's how old I am in this world, with
What the
a
hell's
description
that?
on the back of it, like an iPod Nano. And it said, be an ant, not a grasshopper on the back of it. And we hit like 2,500 by the end of the year. So I had like, after 6 months, I had like 2,500 regular downloading listeners. And by the next Christmas, right? So the next New Year, I went full time and I had a 6-figure business. So I was able to build a 6-figure business from zero, podcasting in my car in 18 months. But that was because I was like completely fucking dedicated. Like Xavier said, like this, like after like a week of doing it and not wanting to kill people when I got home, and I could be a normal person for my family. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this is my thing. This is good. Like Nicole said, now it's my jam.
That's
What
it.
it's going to be, and I'm going to do this. And so like I developed the business model behind it, and then I pushed it, and I was doing it in the car. So I would drive to work and do my show. I'd lock the door to my office. I could get away with that because it was my company, and I would upload it, and then I would just do my job for the day. And I would leave at 7 or 8 o'clock at night to come home, and I had like an hour drive. I would listen to the show I did that day on the way home and be like, dumbass, you shouldn't have said that. Why are you using a placeholder? Like, and I was like, when I played football, you watched your game tapes, not to like, look at me making a touchdown. Like, look what a dumbass thing you did there. Like, and I critiqued myself over and over to get good, because I was a great speaker, because I had spoken publicly my whole life, but I always spoke in front of groups. So like when you're bombing in front of a group, you see people start like, and you're like, oh, I better tell a joke or something. And the first time you do a podcast, if you're a good public speaker, you're like, it's like throwing a flat basketball at a wall. You don't know. You don't know if you're reaching people. You don't know if you're boring people. You don't know if you're rambling. Like, it's so easy to tell. Every one of y'all have spoken in front of groups. It's so easy to see. You're like, I better change things up. I better change my cadence or my tone, or ask. You can't ask somebody a question to make a point or wake somebody up. It's a skill you have to develop. But I mean, that's how I did it. And so I always tell people to do shit that I've actually done. So to me, if you're podcasting, listen to your own shit.
Yeah.
But with like a critical ear and like, how can I be better?
Yeah, for sure.
Just start and be persistent. And then it's good that not a lot of people listen in the beginning, because more often than not, it's pretty shitty.
I look at some of the early baseline episodes and I'm like, what was I thinking?
No, you just
do it.
I think you do have to commit to a timeline though.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do this for 6 months and assess. Like, don't assess after, because I see a lot of people start podcasts and they work really hard, especially those first few episodes. You're like, how do I use the software? How do I get the thing up there and all of that? And they get down to, they finally like 5 or 6 episodes in, they're starting to get a pattern. And then they look at how many listeners they have, and it's like 14, and they're upset.
Yeah.
I had 14 downloads of my 5th episode. I did.
And you had a jumping off point being like on my show. Like, so like,
well, I'd been doing my podcast for more than a year when I was on your show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I had a jumping off point in that people in the Liberty movement knew who I was. And so my first episode had 80, and then it was like 10. And one of those was my mom, and one of those was me. You know,
so it's really 8.
But it slowly grew over time, and it just took being stubborn about, I'm going to do 20 episodes. Okay, now I'll do 100 episodes, and then you're there.
Look what it did for you though. Like when you did your Kickstarter for your coffee.
Wow.
Without your podcast, it doesn't go that way.
No.
Right. You were able to expand your business beyond your goal because of your podcast and your dedication. Part of podcasting as a business model is there's 2 things you're looking for from a customer today. One is money, but the other is their time. You're really asking for a customer's time commitment, a client's time commitment. When you're asking to listen to a show you do for an hour a day, 3 or 5 days a week, right? And if they'll give you that, they'll give you money. Like, I'm just saying, like they're like, because what's the person's time worth? If you're selling a $50 membership to somebody that makes $20 an hour, and they give you 50 hours a year listening to you, what is 25 or 50?
Right.
It's just not that much money.
Yeah, that's good. The Russell Brunson guy talks about this concept of an attractive character. And so it's like the attractive character that's on the video sales letter, on your free offer, your free report. It's you speak from the voice of the attractive character, telling personal stories that people can relate to in your email marketing follow-ups. And being able to do a podcast really creates an environment where there actually is a relationship, and there's a lot of trust and familiarity. And really it's that trust. People need to trust you before they're going to pop their credit card in, or even e-check. Like I do e-checks. People are like, what the hell is this? But they're like, oh, he was on Jack's show and I trust Jack, and Jack spoke highly of this guy, so maybe I'll give the e-check a try. Right. Yeah. So it's all about trust and that communication, and just being able to talk about the product, talk about everything, add value. Podcasts are huge for business and entrepreneurship.
And with that trust comes great responsibility too, because the things we say on our podcasts get taken very seriously.
Yeah.
And so, I do think about that before I spout. I think Jack and I were kind of in the same place on Monday about big tech.
Yeah.
I spent all day getting ready to talk about big tech because I was like, this is messed up, and I can't not say it's messed up, but I have to be careful how I say it's messed up, because if everybody just like walks away from their life and, doesn't have any money coming in because they just cut off all ties, that's also not good.
No, that was, I said you cannot act emotionally in that response.
Yeah.
You have to think logically. But like you like one of the scariest things for me in my entire podcasting career as I started to build traction and get listeners was I started to realize like I'm telling people how to do shit and they're doing it. Right? Like, 'cause if you're doing a show that's like why Nancy Pelosi sucks or something, like there's no real consequence in somebody
Right.
listening to you and saying I agree with you, right? But when you're like, well, this is how you like invest your money, or this
I lost my finger because of Jack
right,
Spear.
yeah. You know, and you
I
gotta
bought
be
that
careful telling
generator.
jokes too, man, because that multitasking thing. You said the finger thing. I had a guy wrote me. He said he didn't, but he almost cut his fucking finger off
Yep.
with a circular saw because I said some kind of joke about something like, I don't remember what it was, a meatless burger. I said it was like having sex with a rubber woman or something like that. And that
Oh,
one I had
no.
like that dude wrote me, and another guy said he had to pull his car over because of the way I said it. He was laughing so hard he was going to have a freaking wreck.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, I get those. Like,
Business, it really
you know,
is.
I spit my coffee out my nose, stuff like that. When you said this or that, like, you know, mine's more entertainment. There is some like educational value to it, like some awareness and things that are going on. But it's really, I'm just casting a big net for fire on, and like,
Yeah.
I want people who are witty, who are clever, who are paying attention to the news, and who will be willing to try new things and want to see the future. Because I like the whole setup was like, I'm from the future, and here we go. And so it was really just like an entertainment thing, and I'm looking up, you know, what because I do podcasts. I actually put it on iTunes and Spotify.
Yeah.
But like maybe 20 episodes, maybe 20 downloads. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, okay. Whereas because the video is like pretty compelling. So,
It's so
Yeah.
gold. It's so gold.
I
It's
love
hilarious.
it, Xavier. I really
You got
do.
the
Like,
freaking
I knew it would take off
Kelly-
when I saw it. Right? I'm like,
Kelly
this is
McEnany.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, this whole
Yeah.
with you guys really kicked it off. I don't know if you know this, but like years ago, Jack, when you first started, like when we did our first interview, and I had just moved to our farm and we were doing the homesteading and search and rescue, I started a podcast, but it was like, you know, just talking about whatever. And I maybe did like 60 episodes or something like that. And it really never
That's a
went
lot.
anywhere.
That's a decent run.
It was, yeah. And I just talked about different topics, spirituality, contemporary stuff or whatever. But I didn't have anything really to sell. You know what I mean? So now, like as things are moving forward, it's like there's something, you know, and it's not even a sales. It's really just like come and party with me in Fire On in the future. You know?
Yeah.
Part
I
of the
think
reason that
Go ahead.
go ahead, Jack.
I was gonna say just one caution I'd give to podcasters: when you start podcasting, you start thinking like, if I can get on so and so show, I'll blow up. Or if I
Yeah.
can get featured,
Yeah.
here, if I can get this guest, like it'll blow me up. And like I did that early on, and I'm not saying it doesn't help. It does help, but it's not going to help anywhere as much as you think. Like I got featured in like the Houston Chronicle and Dallas Morning News and stuff like that. It gave you a bump, but it was like boom, like it just it doesn't stick. I got on Glenn Beck's show. Big bump right back where it was, you know, and
Right.
then steady growth back from where I got Gary Vaynerchuk on my show, and I was like, oh, this is like,
Cool.
because I made a deal with him, like, I'll get you on, we'll do this, but like you have to share me with your community, let everybody know. He did it, big bump right back down, and like so, getting out there, being on other people's shows and stuff, that's all good, but don't overthink that that's what's going to be your thing. You doing your thing every day and developing
It's what
trust
does it.
with your
Yep.
audience and getting them to decide you're the person they want to spend that hour drive with. That's what actually builds a show. And that's something I learned, you know, you do it over and this one's going to do it. This one, no. This one, no.
It's just
Come on,
a
Glenn
slow,
Beck,
steady-
man, that's
yeah.
big. He's got 4 million people who listen to him every day. Being on Glenn Beck, that's, and then I got like the equivalent of the time, the Trump tards of the time, right? They were all fighting Obama,
Yeah.
and, all, and like, oh man, I am not your guy. Like, wow, I don't know what you heard because I didn't say any of that shit. But
Right.
I think the key is to be like a world-class expert, right? Is to be like a to be great at something, to excel at something, and then you have a podcast based around that. You don't have the podcast first,
yeah,
and then you become the
Yeah.
authority. You are the authority, and then you have a podcast.
Yeah.
So I
when
think
you
that's
don't know,
really
don't
key.
fucking fake it. Get somebody that does. When somebody asks me
Yeah.
about some shit, I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like,
Right.
expert counsel, or I find a guest or whatever, and like, yeah, we'll go into that. Like, I know a lot about crypto, but I'm still learning about DEX exchanges. So I'm like bringing a founder of a DEX exchange on because I'm not going to go lipping off about shit I don't know, because people do shit when you say shit. So then
Yep.
when somebody writes you and says, I just lost all my Bitcoin because of you,
Oh,
they're
shit.
not happy, right? I'm not going to be that guy.
So
Okay.
Pippinized asks, what is the suggested minimum frequency for a podcast? I don't know what your guys' minimum frequency is, Jack. I know you're every weekday. That's why I do Baseline every weekday.
Yeah, I would say minimum weekly. That's why there's a Goose podcast, even though we all have other things weekly, like, because they're not going to be there. If you want to build a full-time thing though, man, it's 5 days a week. It's
Yeah.
5 days a week, because even if somebody only listens to you 2 or 3, how many people only listen to you 2 or 3? How many downloads is that? How much does that affect your iTunes rating, right? And your other podcast rating. And it's also then you're going to get better faster. So just if you did 1 a week or you did 5 a week, everything happens 5 times faster because of frequency alone, including you learning what you're doing wrong, making adjustments, etc. I'd say no less than 3 days a week if you want your podcast to be a business. Like, if it's adjunctive, weekly's fine. But if it's not weekly, people aren't going to listen. My other thing is, like, you might want to crank out 4 or 5 really, really fast and then go to a weekly mode, because when people find a podcast in like Stitcher or iTunes or whatever, first thing you guys know when you find, well, you look, how many episodes are there? Because if it's like 3, you're like, I can't trust this bitch to freaking keep it going, right? Like, you want to know that this person's committed before you're going to commit to them, because again, time's valuable. What do you guys do? I mean, as far as frequency,
the key is consistency. It's like if people are used to an episode on Monday morning on their way to work, don't miss it, right? Don't throw off their routine, because that's going to cost you listeners, in my opinion.
I
agree.
slack on that area. I'd like to do my show live, like an hour 4 times a week, something like that, and have people call in and have a screener. I think that'd be really cool. But I added the podcast because my good friend Derek Bros brought me on an opportunity to be on his platform. And I started doing a podcast and a podcast feed. But the way I kind of added the podcast after the fact, it fits in where it can fit in. It's not a big rock where other things fit in. And that works for me. And it's become, there's more of a following and more downloads. But more recently had some big changes, and it took me off my game, and you can see the podcast downloads. But I do know that it is a really solid principle to build that trust, like we've been talking about, and people expect it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or blah, blah, blah. That's there and that's a lot better, I think, than it just being everywhere. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work for you and if it becomes burdensome, then that's not a good thing either. So I would encourage people to get on a regular schedule, at least once a week, ideally more than once a week, like content, 10x, but at the end of the day, it's better to have a podcast that's sporadic than no podcast at all.
I would agree with that. And like I said, it depends. Like, if you're adjunctive to your business, that's one thing. If your business is your podcast, I don't know, how often should you work your business? Right? Like, daily.
That's pretty good.
All the time.
I'm doing 6 now, and like, you can figure out ways to repurpose stuff. So like, YouTube's always been a funnel for me. So I've always been the sporadic YouTuber. Like, I'll crank out a whole series for like 3 weeks straight, and then I won't do a YouTube video for freaking 6 months. So like, that is hurt me with success on video marketing. But coming out of the workshop, I kind of got inspired. I've been doing these Miyagi mornings, these little 8 to 10 minute
I like those
stints every morning. Like, and that opens up a whole new audience of people that will never listen to a whole podcast. But some portion of them trickle in, and that's always why I did the videos. Well, one of my listeners said, why don't you just take all 5 of those videos and just throw them into the thing and throw audio, convert them to audio and run them as a podcast once a week. And he meant like, well, then you can do 4 shows and 1 recap. And I'm like, I'm doing this to do more. So I put out a show every Saturday morning now, but it's really like, it's an hour-long show when they got all added together, but it takes me 10 minutes to do it, right? So it's like 10 minutes, and I have a whole other 1-hour show. Well, that's going to push my iTunes rankings just because it's all based on raw downloads. That's why it's very hard to become like a top podcast in your category on iTunes if you do a weekly show, because even if you have 100,000 listeners, it's 100,000 times 1 instead of 100,000 times 5, and you're competing with somebody that has 100,000 times 5.
Yeah.
People want free content. It doesn't matter if it's podcasts or memes or YouTube videos or ebooks or whatever the case is. They want free content. They want as much of it as possible, and that should be your main sales funnel, in my opinion.
I just say one more thing on the podcast. Don't be afraid to do something that doesn't seem like a good idea. Like if you like it, other people like it. And really, I would encourage people, you want a big audience, but the thousands true fan model, that works so well in podcasting. That model was for musicians, but it was if you have 1,000 people who will all spend 1 day's income a year with you. That's not that big when you're looking at billions of people out there, right? If you do that, you're successful. People think, well, how can you be successful? Well, that would be about 3 annual average salaries in revenue, and you're probably selling something that's a non-material, high-margin product. So you get to keep most of the money, and then come up with all kinds of bullshit you can deduct. If you are an entrepreneur and you are not working the 90% of the tax code with it, you're wasting so much of your power, man, because everything you do has potential to be deductible. You just need a CPA where you say, like, here's what I did, and they might say, well, change this one little thing. Oh, okay. Or if you get audited, this is what we're going to say. Great. As long as you
That's an episode in and of itself, tax minimization.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, hey, Jack, how did you do the listener iPod?
I was honor system, and it was also.
How did you choose somebody?
Oh, so it was a random number generator is what I did. So I just put a form that said, you fill this out, put your name and your email and your phone number on it in case your email didn't work. That way you would get your shit. And I just said that everybody that enters this, I will just trust that you did what I said you're supposed to do. And if we hit the number at the end of the year, I'll just go to a random number generator online, say 1 in 800 or however.
Oh, gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah.
Got the number, and then that person in the spreadsheet got it. But what I did, it was kind of nefarious, man. Like it was like you agree to tell at least 10 people about the Survival Podcast. And I knew that most people would be like, yeah, I'll do it. And then they would feel obligated and they would do something, but they wouldn't go, hey, Bill, you should go listen to this guy, right? What they would do is they would go on their blog, they would go on forums, they would go on social media, and they would tell people that way.
Yeah.
And they would say the Survival Podcast when they link to it, and some bitch, like
even better.
First page of Google's like Jack Spirko for Survival Podcast. Like
The
whole freaking thing for 10 years was that way. And I completely owned the space. And it was all from that. So that was, an iPod Nano back then was like $180. That was like well spent $180.
Yeah. That's marketing, right?
It also gave everybody that was part of it ownership. Like I meet people still today. That was 2008. I meet people today, dude, I was listening when you did that. And I entered it. I actually met the guy like 7 years into it that had it with him at a trade show.
Wow.
Carrying it around. And he was like he was like a friggin' antique by that point. He was still excited that he had it. Like
put that on the barter blanket.
Magic.
Oh yeah, that would be a great barter blanket.
Wow.
I'll tell you guys, like you guys that get into podcasting that are listening to us, that first couple of years, like pour your heart into it because there's magic. Like I can't do the magic that I did back then.
Right.
I'm better now. I have a bigger audience. I make more money, but I will if again, you raised a child, man, you will never have that chance again. You're holding the fingers and you're getting them the walkies and all that.
Yeah.
You'll never, ever have that magic again.
Okay. All right. We are sort of running out of time. Do we have time for one more quick little topic real quick? I think we would be sort of remiss to have a show on counter economics and not discuss counter economic entrepreneurship. So what last question, what do you guys think are the keys to engaging in counter economic entrepreneurship? For my money, I'm going to say operational security. One of the things I run into a lot with 3D printing is I'll get people in my DMs or on Telegram, hey, Sal, can I buy a 3D printed gun from you? And I'm like, okay, Mr. ATF, man, not going to happen. Good try. Come back tomorrow with your FBI pals and give it another shot. So practice operational security, whatever you're doing. What do you guys think?
I was going to say trust, right? Which is kind of the same thing. Like the 3D printed gun. So how far do you want the water to go from your squirt gun, right? Like right. Yeah, I'm not doing this, right? Like counter economics needs to be, you sell to people you know. Right. I mean, that's, and you don't market that the way that you market your main business, or you can even do it openly, but maybe you don't tell people what you're doing, right? Like when somebody pays you cash, they know what you're doing. No one cares. I was like, hey, sticking it to the man. That's fine. Like you got to be smart about what you're doing because counter economics is not necessarily you're selling something you're not supposed to sell. sometimes it's you're selling something that you're not, reporting, so
Right.
you got to have trust when you're in that relationship, because like my dad did a lot of that. He ran a tire shop and he probably reported the gas, right? He sold used tires. I don't think he ever
Good man.
reported a sale of a tire in 15 years. But he had an employee that kind of got sideways with him and was threatened he was going to go tell the IRS and turn him in.
Ooh.
Like, and that guy learned that you could disappear in a Jacksonville swamp somewhere. So he didn't do that. But like you got to be careful what you're doing and who knows what you're doing is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I'd
John
say
X.
it's all about who you know and having a network large enough to be able to sustain the counter economic experience. And then a big thing I think for a lot of people would be just to take that leap and to do it. One of the things that we come across in a lot of our Freedom Cell meeting and organizing is a lot of people are fearful to get involved. And I always point out, like, we're not doing anything illegal. I mean, sometimes I call for a great tax, protest, everyone to opt out, together en masse. That would be illegal down the road, but now we're just meeting and people are going to the gun range together and growing food together. So, but at the end of the day, the tyranny that we're facing and this whole technocracy and this new crazy COVID fourth industrial revolution tyranny, sometimes you got to put a little skin in the game and be willing to take a little bit of risk in order to get a lot of freedom. So I guess that's what I would say. Have a really strong network that has a lot of people in it, ideally that you trust, right? Or have these little circles of trust or some sort of vouching network. And then at the end of the day, don't not do anything. Don't allow yourself to have inaction because you're afraid. Because if one thing that we learned from this whole Capitol siege, although I think it was a let it happen kind of deal, like kind of a psyop false flag. But one thing that we learned is like the government, especially the federal government, they have their freaking hands full right now, man. They're not going to come after you for selling a little pot here and there or whatever the heck your little gray market or black market operation is. Just do it.
Yeah.
But don't be naive, I should say.
Don't get
The
high
federal
on your own
government.
supply, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship. X, Nicole, what do you guys think? Key aspects of counter-economic entrepreneurship.
I don't do counter economics.
That's a no-no.
Democrat.com. I don't have anything to add that has not been covered, so I won't waste time.
Okay.
We got one last question, Sal, from Daniel, who's been really active in the Firon chat. Do you have a different strategy for local engagement versus online engagement?
I don't sell anything locally. Do you guys?
You don't have billboards and I don't
have a local presence at all. I've considered starting like a shop for like a 3D printer, like sort of studio, but it's too much overhead.
It is.
It sort of restricts I'm not location independent anymore, so I've refrained from it.
I don't do a lot of local business, but I mean, I do some things like I sell plants and stuff like that for cash to neighbors, but it's only because I'm making it for myself, and I'll throw it on next door. And I got 100 of these for $10 per 10, and you make $100 in 5 minutes. Like, and that would be an example of that's a counter economics thing that's completely open. Like, no one's going to come to my house because I was selling sweet potato slips.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not going to get an IRS audit letter. Maybe I will now that I said that. Right. For
like, 15 cents.
You made $100 last year. You did a report for sweet potato slips. Right. So like, I mean, it's like I do all my small stuff, I guess, other than people come here for my workshops, and those are big. If you just run the numbers on $500 a head, there's a lot of revenue there. So that's local business, but it's all online, and then it becomes local. I don't know that really that fits that question.
I think having done, so my business is also not local, but I've done local businesses. In the same way that we are all emissaries in our community digitally, you become a local emissary, which means you're seen around town and you're at those events and you get to know the people in your community, and that helps you with your marketing. It's not just billboards on the side of the freeway, right?
Yeah.
That also means every time you're out in your community, if you behave like a dick, you're losing customers. And so if you're doing local marketing and that's not your shtick, right?
Yeah.
Then you need to remember that even when you're not selling, you're selling.
Yeah, any one of us, if you tell our audience we're a dick, they're like, so?
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
And what? Yeah.
I would say think twice if someone's thinking about opening a brick and mortar, because we're in the age of the lockdown. So you better make
Yeah.
sure you can
Yeah,
make
that's
yourself-
Yeah.
add an essential component to the business, and you could make it work, right? Like sell some kind of medicine or something. I don't know. But I used to run a brick and mortar bookstore. We mainly sold health products. It was really freaking difficult. But I remember when I paid some of my friends that were also homeless guys. They would hang out at the store, but I paid them to plaster these flyers encouraging college students to kick the Adderall and try Kratom instead. That blew our shit up just
Really?
all over campus and stuff. It was great. So there's
Yeah.
still a place for the old school way of doing things. Like I do direct mail marketing. If you're one of my Kratom clients and you don't order from me for like a month and a half, you're going to get a postcard that's like, hey man, what's going on? We miss you." But I don't neglect the old school stuff, but at the same time, it's pretty clear where the trend is going. And of course, the Great Reset is furthering that.
Oh, don't you have a great reset event coming up, John Boy?
Yeah,
That's a
quite
good
the plug
point.
there. What a segue.
Good
But
segue.
for the listeners there, if you haven't heard yet, I don't know if y'all promoted it on the last episode or if you missed the
We did.
last episode, but on the 25th, January 25th through the 29th, we're hosting, brought to you by the Freedom Cell Network. We're calling it the Greater Reset Activation. And it's the people's response, or at least our people's response to the Great Reset, which is the World Economic Forum's marketing plan to create New World Order 2.0, surveillance society, remake capitalism into like some eco-fascism, Agenda 21 stuff, all bad things. Well, rather than just focusing on that or freaking out or writing articles about that or complaining about that the next day on social media, we want to present the world with solutions to that so we can move away from the centralization and move towards decentralization. So we don't have cap and trade carbon tax in order to deal with the environment. We have permaculture and localized communities. So every single person on the program today will be presenting. Jack Spirko is going to talk about aquaculture. He's going to talk about our day all about environment and food production. Hawk's going to participate in a panel on apps and technologies for community governance.
Ooh.
And Sal's going to be on an agorism panel. Nicole's going to participate on a panel about freedom cells and community building. So we got Dr. Mercola. We got this huge name, Dr.
cool.
Vandana Shiva. Yeah, he's great. She's like global against GMO foods. She's a really big deal as well. We got Rosa
Huge.
Corey.
She is. She's a big deal.
Yeah, she's big time. So it's going to be Monday through Friday, the 25th to the 29th, 6 to 9 or 6 to 9:30 on some nights, Central Time. It's going to be virtual, although there is like an actual thing going down in Zihuatanejo, Mexico. It's like $30. We're going to fly down to Mexico. Derek's hosting that. And then we're encouraging people to do watch parties in their area so we can get some FaceTime. So we don't buy into the Great Reset by doing only virtual, because that's where they want things to go. We're really encouraging people to meet in person. We'll be doing some stuff here in Austin. So yeah, check that out at thegreaterreset.org, thegreaterreset.org. It's coming up in a couple weeks.
Say what now? Hey, that's awesome. That's from Shawshank Redemption. That's where they went to freedom after they got out of prison.
All
That's
the memories.
Oh, nice.
preaching
Yeah.
God, man.
Well, that works. Let's go. Screw it. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should all go present from there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
John,
Or-
that's the 25th to the 29th from 6 to 9 p.m., correct?
Yeah, I hope you got it on your calendar, Sal.
I do. I'm just making sure for the listeners.
6 to 9 CST. 6 to 9 CST. You definitely don't want to miss it. Hopefully,
Yeah.
everyone's going to leave with all sorts of solutions and super inspired. And
And,
Not just gonna-
Xavier, remember that's Central Standard
Yeah,
Time.
that always screws me
Eastern
up.
time zone.
fireon.com.
All right, guys. Does anybody have anything to add? We want to tell everybody where they can find our stuff before we sign off for the night.
Sure. LiveFreeNow.show is my podcast. LiveFreeNow.show. Just started carrying Delta 8 THC gummies, vapes,
Ooh.
and flour. They're superb, especially the gummies. Feel really nice. Not as hardcore and anxiety inducing as the other kind of THC. MyBraveBotanicals.com for that. Just throwing that out there.
Wait, you can sell that shit in Texas?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's federally legal. It's a loophole because the Delta 8 THC cannabinoids are extracted from a hemp plant, which is any cannabis plant that has less than 0.3% delta 9 THC. So I can sell it to 39 states. There's 11 states, most of which legalized weed. And now it's illegal to ship it to them because you have to be licensed in their state and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
So most states, 39 states.
I'll
Welcome to
DM
the
you after
state.
the show.
Now we're talking.
I endorse that product. It's a good product. I'm Jack Spirko. You can find me at thesurvivalpodcast.com.
Nicole Sauce, livingfreeintennessee.com, and Holler Roast Coffee, hollerroast.com.
Xavier Hawk at Xavier Hawk on all of the social networks except for Twitter.
Fireon.com.
Yeah, fireon.com.
The choice is yours.
Yes.
I am Sal Mayweather, SallyGorse.com, and pick up a 3D printer from 3D Printer Go Burr, BRRR.com. Thank you guys for listening to Unloose the Goose. Make sure you hit that subscribe notification so you can get notified whenever we go live, and subscribe to everybody's podcast on the panel. Thank you guys